A NASA engineer is currently missing, along with a number of other prominent scientists. A comet from outside our solar system shows water that doesn't match anything we've ever seen on Earth. Deep in Antarctica, ice turns up that basically shouldn't exist. These are real events that scientists still can't explain. We're starting with a mystery that's currently playing out in real time. So in June of 2025, an aerospace engineer named Monica Reza went missing. She's the director of materials at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or at least was. In the morning of June 22nd, she was hiking with a friend in the Angeles National Forest. According to her hiking partner, he'd stepped just a few feet ahead of her on the trail. He turned back, saw her wave and smile at him, and then he looked away for a split second to navigate a turn. When he looked back again, she was gone. There was no sound of a struggle. There was no scream, no tracks leading off the trail into the brush. Search and rescue teams spent weeks combing the area with infrared drones and canine units, but they found absolutely nothing. This would be strange enough on its own, but the FBI and a House committee are now investigating a bit of a pattern. Reza is one of roughly a dozen high-level people with above top secret clearances who vanished or died under bizarre circumstances since 2023. Another major name on that list is retired Air Force Major General William Neal McCasland, who disappeared from his home in New Mexico in February 2026. McCasland is the former commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory and had overseen classified aerospace and nuclear programs. He left behind his phone and glasses, but took his hiking boots and a revolver. And these recent cases, are they all connected? We still can't say for sure, but it does seem like there's something super fishy going on. Back in March of 2026, a group of geologists working in Morocco's Dades Valley published something that genuinely messes with how we think life evolved on this planet. They found what are called wrinkle structures in rocks that are around 180 million years old, from the early Jurassic period. But what is a wrinkle structure? Basically, it's the fossilized leftovers of microbial mats, huge sheets of bacteria that used to cover the seafloor. We've always found these in shallow water and assumed the bacteria needed sunlight to survive, same as plants. But these Moroccan fossils were sitting in rock that formed at least 180 meters underwater. That's deep enough that zero sunlight reaches it. Photosynthesis is completely out of the question down there. Researchers from Harvard and Science Daily ran chemical tests on the rocks. They found high concentrations of carbon right underneath the wrinkles, a clear sign of biological activity. So these microbes weren't running on light at all. They were pulling energy straight from chemical reactions with the minerals in the Earth's crust. That process is called chemosynthesis. And if bacteria can exist in total darkness at the bottom of the ocean like this, there's a real possibility something similar is happening right now out in space, on moons like Europa or Enceladus. In April 2026, a giant radio telescope in Chile called ALMA did something that had never been done before. It detected water inside an object from another star system. The object is a comet called 3I Atlas, only the third interstellar visitor we've ever spotted. Astronomers were able to analyze it and found it contains deuterated water, which is basically a heavier version of normal water. In our solar system, comets have a pretty consistent ratio of heavy water to regular water, about one heavy molecule for every 10,000 normal ones, but in 3I Atlas, that ratio is 30 times higher. That is not a small difference. The chemistry that produces that much heavy water is very temperature sensitive, and for a comet to have this much of it, it had to form somewhere colder than 30 Kelvin. That's minus 406 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 243 degrees Celsius. So this comet came from a part of the galaxy that was colder and more shielded from radiation than the region where our sun was born. Point is, this is a real physical object telling us that other star systems can form water and planets in completely different conditions than ours. We used to assume that our solar system was kind of the default template for the universe, but this comet is proof that that may not be the case. In late 2025, a team from a group called Coldex drilled an ice core in a part of Antarctica called the Allen Hills. And what came up from the bottom was pretty strange. Instead of the clear or bluish ice you'd normally expect, the bottom of this core was a murky caramel color. When they dated it, it came back at 6 million years old. The oldest continuous ice we've ever found before this was somewhere between 800,000 and 1 million years old. This obviously blew that record completely out of the water. No pun intended. But the age isn't even the strangest part here. The strange part is that this ice exists at all. Glaciers move. Over millions of years they flow toward the ocean, they melt and get replaced. Every model we have of how Antarctica's ice sheet behaves says it's basically impossible for a pocket of ice to just sit still for 6 million years without getting crushed or swept away. Yet here it is. A team led by researchers from Oregon State University and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution found that this ice has air bubbles trapped inside it from the Miocene epoch, a time when Earth was warmer and sea levels were much higher. Scientists think the shape of the mountains surrounding the Allen Hills might have created a kind of sheltered dead zone where that ice was just left alone for millions of years. In January 2026, a team working with Nippon Foundation Nekton Ocean Consensus confirmed a new species. They're calling it the death ball, a carnivorous sponge found more than 3,600 meters down in the South Sandwich Trench, which sits in the South Atlantic Ocean. Normal sponges are passive things. They sit on the seafloor, they filter tiny particles out of the water, but the death ball is completely different. It's a perfect sphere covered in thousands of tiny hooks, almost like Velcro. And when a small fish or crustacean brushes against it, it gets stuck. Then the sponge's own cells slowly crawl over the prey and digest it alive. Sponges have been around for over 500 million years, and for that entire time, they've been about as threatening as SpongeBob. But then we have this newly discovered death ball. Oddly, there's no fossil evidence of anything in between the more passive filter feeders and this more predatory creature, though. On November 23, 2025, a volcano in Ethiopia called Hayli Gubbi erupted with absolutely no warning. To understand why that's a problem, you need to know what kind of volcano this is. Hayli Gubbi is a shield volcano. It's wide and flat, not the tall, pointy kind. Shield volcanoes are generally calm. They tend to just slowly leak lava rather than explode. On top of that, this one was considered completely dead. It hadn't done anything since the end of the last ice age, roughly 12,000 years ago. There were no sensors on it, no monitoring of any kind, because there was no reason to think anything would ever happen. But on that morning, it sent an ash cloud 14 kilometers into the sky. The ash was fine enough that it eventually drifted all the way to China. Geologists are now trying to work out why this happened with zero warning. Normally, a waking volcano, it gives you months of warning. Small earthquakes, the ground swells, gases will leak out. That was not the case here at all. And that means that magma can apparently move in massive quantities deep underground without leaving any of the clues that we normally rely on to, keep people safe. And that's pretty disconcerting. In 2017, divers working off the coast of England came across something that didn't quite look like your typical 18th century shipwreck. The vessel was a Dutch trading ship that went down in the 1700s while carrying a load of silver and cargo bound for the Baltic trade routes. In the wreckage were human bones, but they weren't the usual dark, brittle remains you'd expect after 300 years underwater. These bones had a bright metallic silver color. When researchers analyzed them, they found that the calcium in the bones had been almost completely replaced by silver ions. The ship was carrying a ton of silver coins and bars, so over time, the silver leached out of the cargo and worked its way into the bones, gradually replacing the original material with metal. We know this can happen, but an example this extreme is almost unheard of, and only 3 skeletons went silver. Other remains found just meters away in the same debris field decayed normally and were mostly gone. Early in 2024, researchers using a dating technique called U-series imaging looked at cave paintings in Liang Karampong, Indonesia, confirmed they are at least 50,000 years old. That makes them some of the oldest cave paintings ever found. The art shows what looks like a hunting scene, these human-like figures hunting a large pig. The figures, though, are a bit off. Their hands have extremely long fingers that end in what look like claws. Now, at the time that this was painted, there were at least 3 species of hominid in Southeast Asia: Homo sapiens, Denisovans, and the small little Homo floresiensis, and none of them had clawed hands. Now, some researchers say the claws are just obviously artistic expression, but others point out that whoever painted this was clearly capable of drawing things realistically, like the pig, so there's also the possibility that they were depicting an actual creature of some kind. As for what that would have been, we don't know. In August of 2025, archaeologists from the Russian Academy of Sciences were digging through a burial site near the old Russian town of Suzdal when they pulled out a silver coin called a jital. This coin was made in the 8th century in the Hindu Kush, the mountain region that's now Afghanistan and Pakistan. According to everything we know about medieval history, organized trade between Central Russia and Central Asia didn't start until the Viking river routes opened up in the late 9th and 10th centuries. So finding this coin in the 700s in a rural Russian grave is pretty strange. It basically means people may have already been moving goods across crazy distances, over 3,000 miles of wilderness, long before we thought those trade routes even existed. In 2007, astronomers working with a radio telescope in Australia picked up something they've never seen before. It was a burst of radio energy that lasted just a few milliseconds, and then it was gone. At first they thought it was interference, something man-made, maybe a satellite, equipment noise, but then it happened again and again, and these things are now called fast radio bursts, or FRBs. They are insanely powerful. In the time it takes to blink, a single FRB can release as much energy as the sun does in days or even weeks. And they're not coming from nearby. These signals are coming from other galaxies billions of light years away. For a while, scientists thought they were one-off events, something catastrophic like a star collapsing or a neutron star collision. But then in 2016, they found one that repeats. Same location, sending out bursts over and over again. That completely broke the original theory. Since then, we've traced some FRBs back to magnetars, which are highly magnetized neutron stars. That explains a few of them, but not all. Some bursts behave differently, different patterns, different energy levels. Right now, we don't have a single explanation for all of them. That's been the video for today. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, next time.